We are freedom fighters, fighting for the rise of the children of the rainbow flag.
What are we fighting for? Sorry, if you can invite your friends to this live stream.
LGBTI, all LGBTI, all LGBTI, going anywhere.
The children of the rainbow fly. Yes, the children of the rainbow fly. Yeah, children of the rainbow fly.
The children of the rainbow fly. LGBTI, LGBTI, LGBTI. We are the children of the rainbow flag. We are cool, choose around and proud. No one's gonna stop us. We are here to stay. We are the children of the rainbow flag. We are moving. Moving on and on. Never, never going back. We are moving. Moving on and on. Never, never going back. Oh, we keep on fighting. Fighting, 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 fighting. We keep on fighting. Fighting, fighting on and on. Never, never gonna stop. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I'm so overjoyed to be back here today with yet another episode of the regular shows that I usually place here about LGBTQ refugees. Again, I come as the Victor Mukasa show, with me, Victor Mukasa. And the topic today is really about LGBT refugees in Kakuma camp. I know that usually there has been The usual shows have been more of testimony shows where we are highlighting the plight of LGBT refugees in Kakuma and have been focusing on Block 13 because that is where we have had reports of attacks and brutality from refugees, homophobic refugees and transphobic refugees, basically from the culture of homophobia and transphobia in and around the camp. On the show, we have been reporting about attacks from the refugees themselves, attacks from outside the camp, discrimination faced by refugees, perpetrated by service providers in hospitals, at police, and all those entities. Today, I'd like to kind of Bajita Panya in Luganda, like move a little bit away from the testimony giving, but rather to have some kind of deep analysis about these challenges that we have been showcasing and sharing with everybody. Most people who are on the show today have been following the attacks at Block 13. Indeed, we have been calling for the evacuation of LGBTQ refugees at Block 13, and we still call for that because the bloodshed we have seen, the injuries that we have seen, the conditions that they live in that we have seen, qualify for people to actually be taken to safety away from that homophobic space. This show today, I have a guest, somebody that you already know, but this time coming in not just as, representing Block 13, but a human rights defender who really cares about LGBTQ plus refugees in Kakuma camp, a refugee himself, and also somebody who has really worked hard to advocate for the evacuation of folks at Block 13 who have been facing these challenges. On this show, we would like to look at all those intricate challenges, the dynamics, intricate dynamics that actually contribute and feed into all these challenges. What are all those factors? Why is it that it is difficult for people to understand why this evacuation is long overdue? Why is it difficult for many to understand that protection, immediate, urgent protection is required in Kakuma camp for those refugees that are under attack? On the show today, I have a human rights defender, a refugee himself, who usually comes in the capacity of the spokesperson of Block 13, but today comes as a human rights defender to talk about these issues. I would like to introduce to you Gilbert Kagarura himself. Some of you have seen him before, some of you haven't, but I have him on the show today. Gilbert, would you like
Hello,
to
Victor.
introduce yourself to our shows? I'm so glad to have you here and welcome.
It's a huge honor to be on your show. My name is Gilbert Kagarura. I'm an LGBTQ refugee and human rights defender and an activist, currently stuck in Kakuma.
Yeah. So good to have you on the show here. Gilbert, we've been having you on the show at Block 13, highlighting the plight there of LGBT refugees, Q refugees and their allies. We have had you mobilize others to tell their stories, which has really been a very, very, very fruitful process. And I'm sure that the world today knows what Block 13 means and the challenges there and the fact that LGBTQ refugees are unsafe in that camp, highly homophobic. However, a lot of people still have questions. A lot of people really struggle to understand the dynamics in Kakuma camp. The dynamics, like the challenges. I think that from my involvement in this issue, I have seen so many factors playing into this, and I wonder if you agree with me on that. And
absolutely.
Yeah, the reason why I wanted you on this show is to help us, to help me actually for me to work with you to unpack, because I have a little knowledge of what is happening there. So if we can just have this conversation, Gilbert, I don't know if you still hear me, but I still see your name on the screen.
Oh.
Hello?
Victor, just a moment.
Yes, we hear you.
Just a moment.
All right, we'll be waiting for you. Yeah, on the
Okay.
show, we'll be unpacking the various factors. We'll be covering mainly 5 areas. I think from my side, I have actually had questions around 5 key areas. And when Gilbert is back, we will talk about that. Before Gilbert comes in, I would like to share with those of you who have just come that every once a week, the Victor Mukasa show features a segment on LGBTQ refugees in Kakuma, and the focus of this show has been Block 13, which invited us in to highlight its plight. And that is a job that we have done, I think, very well. For those who don't know, there have been several attacks on members of Block 13 since June, since the year started, but the involvement of the Victor Mukasa show started in June, when there was a major, massive attack, very brutal, on these refugees by other refugees in the camp. They have been facing several attacks since then. There has been sexual assault. There has been, rape of both men and women. We have had a loss of life at the block itself of late Patricia. And we've had reports of discrimination in hospitals and also at police stations. So this is where this conversation is coming from. They've been calling for their evacuation for quite a long time by the UNHCR, but that has not happened yet. Gilbert, whenever you are able to come on with your picture, that would be great. If you're unable, we can also have your voice. It all works. But right now we see.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just sharing about these various challenges and the intricate dynamics.
Yes.
Of the situation. Do you have anything to say about this? Like, what are these issues?
There are very, very deep underlying issues in the challenges that affect Kakuma.
Yeah, because Gilbert, before you even proceed, I know that people leave Uganda because the majority are from Uganda. There are people from Congo. There are people from Rwanda, from across the greater East African region. They come into Kenya for safety. They come in as refugees looking for safety. What is it that happens? Because we are seeing probably worse things happening than what happened in their home country.
You know, Victor, I know you have you've been persecuted for similar reasons, just like we are being persecuted here in Kakuma and even before we came to Kakuma. So usually when you're being hunted and you're being targeted by the community that should nourish you, should nurture you, there's one thought on your mind. If I flee into another place, I'll probably be safe.
Yes.
I'll probably be safer. So at the back of our minds, as we flee from Rwanda, from Burundi, from Congo, from Ethiopia, from Uganda, at the back of our mind is we are looking for a safer place.
Yes.
We are running away from persecution, running for dear life.
Sorry, Gilbert, your voice, your volume is kind of low. Is it the headphones that they need to come off or louder?
I take them off, is that better?
Yes.
Very good. Now, as I was saying, is that as we leave our countries,
yes,
on the back of our mind, you're thinking, I'll find that one place where I can flourish, where I can be loved, where I can contribute to a community.
Or even just keep alive.
Where I can be allowed to live.
Yeah.
Just as basic as that. It is what is going through your mind. Now, what happens is that this so far has been an illusion for us.
Yes.
You see, as soon as you arrive in Kenya, you realize that it was an illusion. It's different environment, probably worse situation.
Yeah. The homophobia is worse than where you came from.
Absolutely. It is worse. So you find yourself stuck. You are you're a refugee now. You're not even allowed to move. And yet, that hope that you cherished, that kept you going, that once I leave this home country where I'm being persecuted, I'm going to find safety.
Yeah.
Now begin to fade away. Now, Victor, for some, this is too much to take.
Yeah, because they're disillusioned.
Absolutely, they are disillusioned. So they wonder, now what's the purpose of running away?
Yeah.
I could as well have died in Uganda. Doesn't it bother you, Victor, or anybody else that is listening? Why somebody would leave Uganda, would leave Rwanda, would leave Burundi, would leave Congo and come and commit suicide in Kenya?
Yeah, I've heard that there has been suicide of a refugee.
Absolutely.
Somebody who fled their country to keep alive.
Yes. You're very well aware of the suicide of 𝒂𝒆𝒇𝒊𝒏𝒆 at the beginning of the year. He had hopes, he had dreams. As he fled persecution from his homeland, he believed things would get better. But like most of us, he realized that things got worse. The continued persecution in the country of asylum, the deplorable living conditions. Somebody believes there is no reason, there is no sense in running, in moving on.
You have a young girl at Block 13 who once came to the show. I think she's called Shifra. One time she testified that she left Uganda with her family in the hope that they can be safe and that she can pursue her dreams. But was it Shifra? That but with the situation in Kakuma, she's losing hope.
Absolutely.
It was either Shifra or somebody else that they are losing hope. They might never achieve those dreams.
You see, Victor, if you lived in Kakuma and you are LGBTQ, you would relate with her sentiments.
Yeah.
Striving to live every day, walking among people who openly, who openly hate you.
So hungry to do away with you.
Who will silence you, who will kill you at the earliest opportunity. It is extremely difficult to cherish and hold on to dreams in those kinds of circumstances. It is a big, big challenge that when people get here, when we get into this country of asylum, because now we are discussing specifically Kakuma.
Yes.
When we get here, it becomes a huge problem. The whole dream that you cherished is shattered. This is a big, big problem. So when somebody commits suicide, it's not that they don't want to live.
Yeah.
The fact that they ran from their homeland into Kenya, into Kakuma, is an indication that they cherished life. They want to live. But the disillusionment drives some of us on the edge, and others ultimately don't see the point in moving on.
That's a serious
May 𝒂𝒆𝒇𝒊𝒏𝒆 rest in peace.
May he rest in power.
And I also take the opportunity to say the same for our little angel,
Yeah.
Patricia Nambiru. She never even got to see life.
Yeah, for those of you who have just joined us, Patricia Namubiru was a refugee infant, an infant refugee at a Block 13 in Kakuma Refugee Camp. She was sprayed with tear gas when she was only 3 days old at the instructions of the UNHCR, and 4 months later, 4+ months later, she died from the effects of that tear gas. That is the child that Gilbert is talking about.
May their souls rest in eternal power.
Yes.
You see, Victor, what we're talking about is that the things that we yearn for, some people take them lightly because they don't realize that others have been deprived of theirs. You know, the ability to live in a society and be useful, for example, the ability to love, you know, the freedom.
I fled Uganda for the same reasons into the US. And, you know, even, I mean, I came through the asylum system and, you know, moved up the ladder. But, you know, at some point, I was really disillusioned, not that my safety was compromised, but my dignity in so many other ways was actually played with the system here in the United States. But what I have seen in Kakuma makes me feel like this is even luxury and that I'm just a crybaby when it comes to the challenges that I face as a refugee here in the United States. I have watched with keenness what is happening in Kakuma camp, and you know, I believe this, and that's why I thought that this conversation will help people understand those issues, those factors that are at play. But with all these, Gilbert, you know, refugees are disillusioned, and it's like falling from the pan into the fire. It's not that you come out of the fire and go back, I mean, out of the fire and then go back in the pan. It's the same situation. And I guess that's why people won't say, okay, I'm going back to Uganda. In fact, I've had some refugees say that they would rather be in jail than be in Kakuma camp. I have heard that some refugees say that they would rather be in the grave than be in Kakuma camp. I think it's all that disillusionment and then later giving up on life. But the other issue that I was wondering, because now all this is happening, what is the government, you know, why, like, what is the situation with the government? I have heard about laws, I have heard about policies that, for me, on my perspective, that most likely do not favor, you know, this situation. And probably our cause are impeded by those policies and laws. Do you want to unpack those laws and policies with me? And do you agree that they are actually a very big contributing factor to the plight of LGBT refugees in Kakuma camp?
They do. And this is why I think you called it an intricate, you know, the intricate dynamics. Now, there is a contribution to this challenge. The government laws, directives, policies, in a way, also lend a hand to the challenges that we go through as LGBTQ refugees in Kakuma.
What are those laws or policies?
I'll pick some for you out.
Okay.
To begin with, you see, the government retains the jurisdiction. They have the prerogative on where refugees should be. Now, the encampment policy here in Kenya dictates that all refugees should be in a camp. Now, when these policies are being drafted or they're being designed, they do not anticipate that there will come a situation, for example, when refugees, the larger section of refugees, will target a smaller section of refugees. Now, in the event that when this larger section of refugees and maybe the community around targets a smaller section of these refugees, what happens? Now, the policy has been blanketly applied in most cases. You should be in the camp.
Yeah.
If you've been following the situation in Kenya, you're aware that some refugees have been brought on gunpoint, including those on the profile of LGBTQ.
Yes, I
to
have heard.
Kakuma Refugee Camp.
I have heard that people have been forcibly put on trucks and buses
Absolutely.
to be taken to the
They have
camp.
been brought on gunpoint because according to the policy, we're supposed to be in a camp.
But why them? I see that we have LGBT refugees and other refugees in the urban areas like Nairobi, in Mombasa, and others.
You see, at some point, it was possible to be registered as an urban refugee, which has long since been removed. But besides that, there is a waiver to this policy. Under special circumstances, it can be waived. In which case, now, for example, the LGBTQs that have become a target of other members of the community can be relocated to safety. Now, why am I saying that the government laws have not been used to protect the refugees? This waiver has not been, for example, applied. With all the bloodshed, the outcries, the rallying call from concerned people outside Kenya, they have not been enough to move either the government or the UNHCR to pursue this waiver, for example. There is a waiver that can be applied to have people of concern, refugees that are at risk.
Like,
for example,
insecurity and the need for protection and the attacks, isn't that enough reason for the waiver to be applied?
Yes, it is enough reason. It's common sense, Victor. And you as a human rights defender, it comes naturally for you.
It should come naturally for everybody.
It comes naturally. Yeah. You see, life should be protected.
I wish I worked there. I think that is an obvious. But certain things that are so obvious.
But you see, besides these encampment policies, there are other laws that also compound on the misery of the LGBTQ refugees. Now, these laws, for example, that criminalize same-sex relationships.
Oh yeah.
I know of a brother in the LGBTQ family who was recently told by a person in the authority that if I get you outside the camp, I would arrest you. You should not be in Kenya. Now, I think that major law that criminalizes same-sex relationship, homosexuality, tends to override these other laws. There is that they should not even be here. We should not be protecting them.
But isn't that illegal in Kenya? I think that if the UNHCR has agreements, for example, with the Kenyan government, because I think that UNHCR has certain agreements with the governments of the countries, say where they put camps, they knew that certain laws, certain lives or lifestyles are illegal in that country. It means they have had a conversation around that. And probably that is why the borders are open. And that is why the government also accepts the registration of what you would call illegal people from other countries. Why are these things not like this is what gives me confusion sometimes. And indeed, it is a very, very, very confusing dynamic here.
It is. It is. You see, in a general sense, LGBTQ persons or anybody identifying as LGBTQ is not allowed on the Kenyan soil. But of course, they gazette some areas.
Yeah.
And under some special agreements and different memorandums of understanding, and then they say that you can live here.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge is that after they have agreed that this is a gazetted area for you where you can live, the other big law tends to come in when there are challenges, especially with the choice of location where you have been allowed to live. They will tell you that you don't have rights. as an LGBTQ person. You don't have rights. And yet, they have allowed you to live in their country. It's a conundrum.
Yeah.
Because you're saying that, okay, it's okay, we know you're being persecuted, you can live here. And then when you have brought me, I say, okay, don't say anything because you know you're illegal here.
You're illegal. Jesus
exactly.
Christ. Good to be a refugee in Kenya.
You know, and that shatters, for example, the confidence of those that you are actually presumably protecting. It becomes
well, looks like we are having a glitch there. Gilbert, let me know when you return. It's very interesting. I think the point where we are now is that confusion. Thank you. I think you are back, but yeah, please go on because this was becoming really interesting.
You know, an LGBTQ person will hesitate to approach, for example, a government official, knowing that we're being looked at as illegal.
Yeah, you know, I remember that a woman from Block 13 again gave a testimony that when the 4 girls that were women that were sexually assaulted on July 19th, I think, they testified that when they went to report to the police station, one of the police officers said that it would be seen as treason if they took a statement from lesbians. And he refused to take a statement. All the victims who were clearly still wounded and injured, you could see that they had injuries, but he said it's illegal. I mean, it's treason. It would be seen as treason. And that's how.
Absolutely.
But they are protecting you.
Yes. You know, for protection to be meaningful, the protection you give should give a sense of security, a sense of safety to the person that you're presumably protecting. Now, if that sense of security is not there, if that sense of safety is lacking, there is a big problem with the safety that you're providing. Now, still on the laws, you know, we have, when we ran, for example, to the UNHCR compound, in Popo, they cited, you know, the COVID-19 directives.
Yes.
There were presidential directives. There were other, I think, other ministers who had issued other, you know, I can call them sub-directives.
Yeah.
You know, specifically for Kakuma and Dabab. They cited these as hindrances, for example, as why they were not able to provide protection
to the refugees.
Now, when I cite the government laws, policies, and directives as a challenge, you would understand why. Because now you have a person who is dying.
Yeah.
And now you're telling them that I'm protecting you by confining you in a place where you're going to die.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense when
somebody Victor.
could die tonight and you're saying you're protecting them. But you're just saying I'm protecting you from COVID, but you know, it is okay that you die from an attack, from a machete.
You can die from, you know, fire, you can die from a panga, you can die from, you know, poisoning. But I'm also protecting you from COVID.
You see, this is the thing that I have said before on this show still, that the UNHCR, the government of Kenya, the way they treat LGBT refugees in Kakuma is like how a child is being abused at home by their father, and then they go to report to the police, and the police says, okay, we have taken your statement. You can go back home and we shall investigate. And they send you back to the same home where you're being abused. And, you know, that is the way they are protecting you, in the name of protecting you from COVID-19, using COVID-19 as an excuse for protection.
Yes. Victor, I like your illustration. Very, very appropriate. Now, you see, that is the challenge. But you see also, they prefer to apply the directive of COVID as opposed to a noble duty of doing an all-round protection.
Yeah.
So in some cases, these directives, these policies have actually been used to just excuse the lack of willingness to act, actually. Because it
During
doesn't
the
make
period
sense.
where the UNHCR has used the excuse of COVID or the reason of COVID, I understand that in the same period where they say they cannot protect people by taking them out of danger to safety, that same period, they forcefully brought people using the encampment policy from Nairobi to Kakuma. And that that kind of confuses me. Like, there's COVID as you go to Nairobi, but there's no COVID as you come from Nairobi to Kakuma.
Thanks for pointing that out. Now, that's what I'm trying to highlight here, that it has been, these policies have been not used well.
Yeah.
They have been used as an excuse. Because if you're saying, I can't take you out of danger because of COVID, and then you bring somebody from Nairobi to Kakuma, it kind of belies. It belies the claim that, for example, COVID is the reason why you're stuck in a dangerous place.
Yeah, it erases it.
So the way these policies, the way these laws have been applied in behalf of LGBTQ refugees raises question marks. It does not show the spirit, the love, the duty to protect human life. Because frankly, it could have been done better.
Because they may not love, but they are responsible. It's a responsibility, you know.
Absolutely.
Even if they don't love, if they have signed up to work there, it means that they have a responsibility to protect.
They do. They do. Now, besides issues where, for example, policies have been used to explain not being able to help or not to protect LGBTQ refugees in Kakuma, we have another challenge. You see, when you come to account of asylum, the asylum process is that you must prove, for example, in our case as LGBTQ persons, you must prove your profile. You must prove that you're LGBTQ.
Prove that you're gay.
Yeah, it's a legal requirement.
The burden is on you to prove that.
Exactly.
Forget about your insecurities.
It is a huge psychological burden. Actually, it's part of the torture that LGBTQ refugees go through.
That is torture.
Let me expound on that. Think of a survivor of rape, for example.
Yeah.
A survivor of sexual and gender-based violence. As part of the legal requirement to please, to convince decision makers that you are gay, most of us are forced to relive the traumatic events that we have experienced. You must forego your sense of autonomy. You must keep going through the same traumatic events that you fled, that some are only thriving or are only alive because they have decided to shut them off.
Yeah.
But this is a legal requirement. Now somebody has to keep going through that and that just to prove that they are gay. The lack of autonomy, the lack of, that sense of protection from what you have gone through.
Yeah.
The exposure being triggered by these laws and requirements that keeps people reliving traumatic events has a huge negative impact on LGBTQ refugees.
Yeah, psychologically, this would kill me if I have to constantly have if the burden is on me. Really, the issue is that I am not safe. I have been attacked. Things have been done to me, and you're telling me, prove that you're gay.
Absolutely.
And I wonder how you prove that you're gay. Do they have a machine that measures, the
you have you have to prove that you're gay. Now, somebody is having to relieve trauma because of some of these unfavorable government policies and laws. Now, how this affects some individuals in the LGBTQ family, at times it's one of the reasons that drive them to do the unthinkable.
Yeah.
You see, the protection process is driving somebody into suicide, for example. Somebody lacks a whole sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
That effect it has on their mental health is huge.
We have had
but all these are the intricate dynamics.
Yeah, and people need to understand.
Play.
People need to understand these dynamics, because a lot of people actually, this is the reason that they start questioning a very obvious thing that is happening in Kakuma. Yeah, and viewers out there, if you have any questions, please let me know. In case, as we discuss, we can tackle some of those questions. Yeah, and it's very like that is a very, very complicated thing. In fact, it is almost very abusive when that burden is put on the person fleeing persecution based on homophobia and transphobia, based on their sexuality and gender identity. That is, I would find that like you rightly call it a form of torture. It is torture. Call it a form of torture. And yeah, and as you were talking about that, I thought about the role of fundamentalism, religious and culture. Have you thought about that as one of the players in this crisis?
Yes, it is usually the genesis.
How so?
It is at the core of the challenges that we LGBTQ persons face. Now, fundamentalism, let's begin with the religious, for example.
Yeah.
Religionists, some religionists, have promoted the belief that the diversity in sexual orientation is simply different manifestations of evil.
Yeah.
That's the way they have promoted it.
Unfortunately.
All these different diversities, as represented by the different letters in the acronym LGBTQI+, for them, all these are the different manifestations of evil. They have successfully.
Has this played in the camp? Like practically, has this played a role in Kakuma camp?
It is, Victor. It's even at the basis of these laws that we mentioned. It's at the basis of the attacks that we come come across in our homelands,
Yeah.
even in the countries of asylum.
Yes.
It is at the core, it is at the basis of everything. Now, let's bring it to Kakuma, for example.
The attack because their culture says no.
Aha. In Kakuma, you have both cultural and religious fundamentalists.
Mm.
Now, the religious fundamentalists, they believe that our kind should not even be accorded help. It's like aiding the devil.
Mm.
They believe that if harm is done on us, if we are attacked, it is our fault.
Yeah. God is punishing you.
They have, exactly, they have fostered that belief
Mm.
in those that subscribe to this kind of thinking, that whatever happens to us because of our sexuality is our fault.
Could it be the same reason that, sorry, my daughter is in class. The door is open. Excuse me, everybody. I'll go and close the door. I can hear her class going on. I'm sorry about this. Yeah, everything these days is done virtually. So she is at school doing her school. I could hear her here, but I was asking you that is that the reason that this culture, we even find it among the service providers, because they are doctors, they are nurses, but their religious values, the cultural values still come first. They are police, they are camp leaders, but their religious and cultural values govern them. That must be contributing a lot to this culture of homophobia and transphobia at Kakuma camp.
Absolutely.
You
know, and unfortunately, before I even talk about the effect it has had on those that are around us,
yeah,
both in terms of neighbors and service providers, as you've highlighted,
yeah,
you will see this in some who are even supposed to be human rights defenders, for example.
Yeah.
They will say, you're not keeping a low profile. This is the attack that has been used especially against the transgenders.
I have heard the story of the low profile.
I
have wondered if I was in Kakuma camp with my transgender identity, I don't know if I would be alive still. I feel for transgender people in that camp. I mean, I feel for everybody, but I'm wondering how a trans woman or a trans man can actually start, you know.
As part of the transgender awareness, you know, the campaign that is ongoing, you probably saw the report from Forbes that the number of deaths for transgenders has gone up.
Yes, everywhere in the world.
And every year it is going up. You see, religionists have convinced people that by attacking and harming these people, you're doing good.
Yeah, the religionists believe that they're doing it on behalf of God. They're serving God.
Absolutely. It's one way of pleasing God. So now when you hear, for example, activists blaming a refugee who has been attacked, that it is your fault.
Yeah.
You should have kept a low profile. It means that even those that have dedicated their lives to fighting for equality for humans, this sort of attitude is beginning to rub on them.
Because I've had some activists say that it is the fault of the refugee for not keeping a low profile.
Yes. It is rooted in the belief that it is our fault. We are sexually different, so these attacks are justified.
That's sad.
Yes. They, for example, believe that LGBTQ refugees should not be part of the society. The cultural fundamentalists believe that it is just a habit that was learned. They believe, some of them, for example, like in Kakuma, they believe that this is, for example, from foreign lands.
You
and
see,
in their misguided...
I have, can you stop it, please? I have heard very from, you know, like I've been working on LGBT refugees since 2014. And I know, I can testify that even in Nairobi, not just Kakuma, UNHCR officials themselves there's a lot of homophobia within the UNHCR officials. I can testify actually from just thinking, just looking back what I have heard, even from my own family and other refugees who left Kenya before, where UNHCR officials were actually case workers. They come and the refugee comes and starts to tell their story to them. And the caseworker, in fact, starts to tell them about God and how, why are you a lesbian? Why would you be transgender? God created you as a beautiful woman. These are UNHCR officials. And this has been, it has been put out there. And to date, you still hear that such things appear. When people call the hotlines for counseling, they are being counseled into keeping a low profile. It looks like they have no idea even what they're dealing with.
They do not. Victor, they do not. That's why when they are addressing this, for example, a case worker will leave you convinced that it was your fault. They believe, along with all other fundamentalists, that this is a habit. So some believe that when they attack you hard, then you drop the habit.
You stop being gay, lesbian.
Absolutely.
Transgender.
They believe that by attacking you hard, by harming you, by persecuting you, they are helping you to put you on a correct path.
So the other refugees actually want you guys in the camp, only you need not to be gay.
Absolutely.
They would be okay with you in the camp if you were not gay or lesbian, or, you know, LGBTQI+.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they believe they are straightening us. They believe they are doing God a service by beating the evil that is in our heads. That's why they crack our skulls, for example. They believe they are beating the evil that is in our flesh. That's why they slice it. It's the fundamentalism and the effect that it has had.
It's difficult to understand. This has been ongoing for years, and up to now, the UNHCR has not found ways of curbing this.
No, absolutely.
Changing the culture.
In fact, if you look at the statements that UNHCR has been issuing, you will see this trend.
How so?
You will see the trend.
Talk about that.
Yes. It is very clear in their statements. Because if you remember, they say that we, for example, I'm going to use Block 13 here as an example. We refused to participate in a dialogue where we were supposed to be paraded before the community. So UNHCR was suggesting that for them to have us accepted in the community, it's important that they pick us, parade us before the community that comprises of very, very strong fundamentalists, and say that, look, these people are the LGBTQ. Learn to live with them, learn to be, to accept them. Now, the challenge is that UNHCR did not take time to understand this intricacy that we're talking about. The combination of challenges that puts a defenseless refugee in a very, very, very serious situation. You do not change fundamentalism in a single day. You do not change
You don't just
fundamentalism.
come and parade LGBT people and tell the world, okay, these are LGBT, learn to live with them. This is what the UNHCR was trying to achieve by such a dialogue.
It's the solution that they have so far presented. Now, Victor, you'll agree with me that frankly was putting us in more danger, because it takes a very long time to change the mindset of deeply entrenched beliefs among these people. So for the period before these beliefs, the fundamentalism has changed, you are endangering the ones you have paraded. We know the sort of danger that this would put us, and we rejected that. But UNHCR, just like all fundamentalists, they were quick to blame us. It's now our fault.
Yeah.
It's now our fault that we have refused, for example, to be paraded.
Yeah. I feel that the UNHCR just makes the culture of homophobia continue, especially when it refuses to acknowledge that they are homophobic refugees, indeed. When it refuses to acknowledge, when refugees report, LGBT refugees report that we are being discriminated against at the clinics that you have provided, the UNHCR will not take that liberty to say, we hear you, and then go ahead and work with the hospitals that, look here, we know that over the years you didn't have the people like this, but now we do have them.
Absolutely.
This is how we work with such people. We have brought some, people from other places like Kenya, Uganda, wherever in Africa, to actually help us understand this situation. I see that from statements that the UNHCR has actually defended the homophobe.
You can say that. At the end of the day, that is what they were able to achieve. They said in one of the statements that we were reporting incidents of attack, which I think should not be a surprise, neither to them nor to anybody else. But they said that other refugees were also reporting that we attacked them.
Yeah.
Far off from even where we stay.
Other LGBT refugees.
Wow.
So
the point I'm making here is that all this is an expression of fundamentalism. Now, UNHCR, as an institution that has dealt with our kind and other at-risk minorities, they would understand the effect of the combination of these all factors. A person who has fled persecution for dear life and finds himself even in a terrible situation. A person who is stuck simply because the government has created policies that require them to be in danger. A person who is going through shattered dreams. The UNHCR has failed to see how this can impact, for example, on behavior. They do not see this. They have chosen to look for opportunities to blame refugees as opposed to opportunities to protect.
Protect the refugees.
These are expressions of fundamentalism. As an institution, they have not been able to rise above that.
Yeah.
Just like the rest of the fundamentalists, it is our fault that we are being attacked. Since we are LGBTQ, it is our fault that all this is happening. That is the belief. It is a shame, because one would have expected them at least to look for opportunities to protect.
Yeah.
As for opportunities to attack, you know, to blame.
To blame the victim.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to take that responsibility, your responsibility away. They're running away from responsibility, I believe. And it's easier to do that than to protect when it comes to them. Yes, please.
Out of all these factors, how they combine, how they affect. You see, in fact, I urge, you know, researchers delve into this.
Yeah.
To understand, for example, the effect this kind of exposure has on the mental, on the overall well-being of the LGBTQ refugees.
Yeah.
I believe the study will reveal shocking details, but it does not need a researcher, surely, to see this, Victor.
Yeah.
It does not need a scholar to publish a document, to publish a publication about this. We only need hearts in the right place.
And ears.
And ears, yes.
And ears. A lot of people who have actually disbelieved or not really paid attention to the refugee crisis, you know, or who are people who have not used their ears to listen.
They are. If you are out there and you believe that we deserve these attacks, we deserve the rejection, that we deserve the pain, the suffering, the death that we are going through, then probably you are one of those fundamentalists who believe that diversities in life are manifestations of evil. It's not true. We are all beautiful in the different ways that we were created. This is the message I would pray that UNHCR promotes, that there is beauty in diversity, that there should be accommodation for the different diversities that we have, that there should not be reason to take somebody's life away, destroy their beliefs, destroy everything they stand and believe in just because they are different.
Take away their future.
Absolutely. We are in Kakuma. We look alive. But the psychological effect of these factors is huge. Think of the children, for example, Victor.
Yeah.
A child who grows, an LGBTQ child who grows in a camp, grows up in a camp. At an early age, they are aware that their elders are always on the run because the community hates them.
That has such a great
the only way they can rationalize it. Absolutely. Can you imagine the damage that is being done to such a little one?
And I'm just wondering now, UNHCR knowing that there are even children, say at Block 13, who have been a part, of all these, have they ever reached out to just the children? That, okay, we won't care about these bigger ones. It's their fault that they're what they are, but let's reach out to the children of this world,
No,
the
they have
future
not.
of this world, who have witnessed who have witnessed massacre, who have seen machetes swinging from left, right, and center, who have seen their houses where they're sleeping being set on fire. Like, Lord, like there are certain things that are just so obvious. And this brings me to the question, are there other players within Kakuma, around Kakuma, that are, a part of this protection, or either offering protection or advice to the UNHCR, or is there a support for even the UNHCR? Because clearly there is need of advices
Yes.
for UNHCR if they don't see persecution of LGBTQ refugees. Maybe somebody else is seeing it that is operating in Kakuma.
There are, Victor, other players. But just before I get to it,
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to the plight of the children. Just conclude it a bit.
It's
these children are growing up with the belief that if this community hates us, wants to hurt us, surely there has to be something wrong with us.
Yeah.
And chances are they will not function properly in a community, even after they have grown up.
No.
This will affect their social networks.
It would affect any child.
It will affect them in many ways that we can imagine. All this has been done in the belief that extremism is right, that fundamentalism is right.
Yeah.
That it is morality, that it is a service for good. We need to protect the young minds. It's common knowledge that children need a loving environment to grow up wholesomely. We need that. They need to have an opportunity to grow up wholesomely. They have to be protected. We cannot keep quiet about this. Protection is important. I'm glad you hosted me on this show because probably these are some issues that need to be given serious thought
I'm so
and
happy
to be considered in some of the decision-making processes that are going on. Even when, for example, UNHCR or the Kenyan government comes out and issues a well-written statement, you have failed the young ones.
Yeah.
You have failed them. No amount of explanation, no amount of statements is going to undo that kind of damage that you have done, that you have exposed these people to.
It has even led to the death of an infant.
Yes.
Those excuses that are being given.
It has, Victor.
I'm sorry about this.
It has.
Yeah. You can go on. You can go on.
It has led to the death of an infant, and probably more will follow. But also, those that are dying in a figurative sense are many, children and adults alike.
Like the souls have already been killed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So surely we cannot continue to give excuses. We need to see action. Protection in action. We need to see that. You mentioned something about other players.
Yeah, like even if it's a government in Africa, it has advisors, say NGOs, like who would see things, who will, give a, like who would give a different report from, say, if UNHCR is failing to do things and getting excuses, making excuses in their statements. Don't we have any other players in Kakuma, like in the NGO world or NGOs from outside that are working in Kakuma, to just tell the truth about what is happening?
This is one of the most complicated areas that, in my view, has presented the largest challenge to all efforts to take LGBTQ refugees to safety.
How so?
It is the key area, and yet it is a very sensitive area. And some of us are taking a very, very huge risk to delve into this. But we will nonetheless, because we decided to discuss the deep, intricate dynamics that affect the challenges of LGBTQ refugees in Kakuma Refugee Camp. There are players of two categories. There are those that operate within formal capacity, and those are called UNHCR implementing partners. Among these, you have NGOs and you have government institutions. All of these are partners and players within Kakuma Refugee Camp and have a role to play in either resolving or ignoring the crisis within the LGBTQ community in Kakuma Refugee Camp.
Yeah.
These, however, most of them are limited because UNHCR and the Kenyan government call most of the shots.
Yeah.
They call most of the shots. In the normal setting, they have the shots. It's usually their call what happens and what does not happen. But we have other players, Victor, within the asylum process here in Kakuma, in Kenya really. Now these players, some are very, very powerful, but do not take the front row. They operate within, the background. Now these players, some of them are so powerful that they convene meetings with UNHCR.
Oh yeah.
Almost at will.
Yeah.
And these meetings are supposed to protect LGBTQ refugees. But I don't know if you've heard of this.
No, I have heard of, I can testify to that when you mentioned that I and so many other advocates have sought meetings with UNHCR to deal with this crisis, to discuss this crisis, and we have been denied those meetings. And yet I know of other organizations that actually say that the situation in Kakuma is exaggerated. Those organizations can easily get a meeting, and they actually get meetings with UNHCR. I get what you're saying.
Absolutely.
I can testify to that. Yeah.
And those few that have been allowed in some of these meetings with these other players who are operating from the background have at times been asked to sign confidentiality agreements. Victor, why would you need a confidentiality agreement in discussing interventions for LGBTQ refugees? What are you protecting? What are you hiding? Now, these players are so powerful and so well connected that they operate at extremely high level within the UNHCR. They use every possible means, resources, and some deployment on the ground in Kakuma Refugee Camp to control what the world sees and hears about Kakuma.
But they are seen as support for the refugees.
That is the guys. That is the outside court. You know, I don't know whether you are an ardent reader of the Bible, but you've heard of the expression in the Bible, a figure of speech in the Bible, that a wolf among sheep. You know,
yes.
a wolf putting on a sheep's clothing.
Yeah, I've heard that. I get what you're saying.
What happens now? These players have interests in the process of the LGBTQ refugees, in the presence.
What kind of interest would, what kind of interest would that be that actually makes you say, I'm going to control you and I don't want you to talk about your insecurities, to talk about how unsafe you are? Like, what kind of interest are you holding in that?
Most of the interest is financial. It's not about power. It's just, most of it is financial. Now, the challenge is that for this interest to be maintained, you must have continued presence of LGBTQ refugees in Kakuma. Now, these players will make sure that the message that goes out to all human rights activists, defenders, the people out there, is distorted, is fault. That at some point, the defenders even begin to doubt that they're actually defending the right group. Are you even aware, Victor, that at some point, LGBTQ refugees were in Kakuma, not registered, not recognized, and UNHCR was telling the world that there are no LGBTQ refugees in Kakuma. All these are mechanisms designed to hold and control the evacuation, the protection process, how and when LGBTQs are able to leave Kakuma. Now, my pain stems from the fact that UNHCR can put the interests of these individuals ahead of the safety of the refugees. Before I quote a recent statement from a UNHCR official, I would like to take a moment to recognize some human rights activists and defenders that have been able to speak and stand out against these players. Recently on your show, I think Canary Murungi made a very clear call. Stop dictating what people post. Stop preventing people from telling the world. Canary Murungi was among those that exposed the lie that there are no LGBTQ refugees in Kakuma. To be able to speak out against these powers takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, I know that there have been a lot of threats.
I would like to thank and recognize the contribution of Doreen Andrews.
Yes.
Nga Chiworogoma, the Iron Lady.
Yeah.
She has been vocal about what is happening in the camp. I know this has placed her in danger.
Yeah. Fear.
She fears for her life, just like the rest of us. But the message has gone out. Even these powers, the dark powers that control what goes out in Kakuma, what happens, what is known by the world, realize that they are fearless human rights defenders that go out of their way at the risk of their lives to shed light on what is happening. I would like to thank Stephen Seruma.
Yeah.
They have done a tremendous job. They have been outstanding in shedding light on this evil, illicit.
Standing on the truth amidst all the threats.
Yes. I would like to thank Purity
Page.
Purity Page. They have been fearless defenders. I would also like to thank Mbazira Moses. Seasoned fighter, human rights defender. They have come out against such powerful enemies and showed the world that, look, what you're seeing is a hologram. It is you're in a magic show. They're showing you an illusion. And on this particular point, I'd like to fault UNHCR on one thing. And if I fault them, let me first quote. Recently in Geneva, this was towards the end of September, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, or commonly known as HIAS, held a two-day meeting. They held a two-day meeting, and during this meeting, they were discussing research on LGBTQ persons. And during this meeting, an official from Geneva, from UNHCR, he is the director of international protection in UNHCR. He's a very powerful person. His name is Mr. Volker Turk. I would like to quote what he said. He said, we need to use all the tools at our disposal in close partnership and send a strong and unambiguous message that all forms of discrimination and violence are not permissible. End of quote. A strong and unambiguous message.
That is the director, the head?
International Protection. UNHCR, Geneva. This is what we expect from UNHCR, especially in Kenya. We expect a strong and ambiguous message that the violence against LGBTQ refugees, discrimination against LGBTQ refugees is not permissible. And as the director put it, this can be best done in partnership. I personally would like to make a call to the UNHCR. The day you live up to these words, you will have started on the protection process for the LGBTQ refugees in Kakuma. The day you resolve that you're not going to be vague, that you're not going to cover skull-cracking attacks, leg-breaking attacks as mere tension. The day you describe them for what they are, the day you condemn them, we will have embarked on a journey to protection. But for as long as the message from you is ambiguous, for as long as the message from you is unclear, it's hard to associate you with finding violence and discrimination as not being permissible. We find it hard to relate you with that. We need to see UNHCR come out and condemn these attacks.
It's long overdue.
And on this particular point, I'd like to make a call.
Yes.
Human rights organizations.
Yes.
Human rights defenders. These dark powers that control when LGBTQ refugees are released from captivity, that have a bearing on what UNHCR is going to say in terms of the situation that is on the ground. There is a big misconception. Now, because some of us have risked our lives to talk about this, UNHCR has somehow managed to present it as, you know, a feud, as an opposition of sorts.
Yeah.
When you condemn violence against unarmed, harmless refugees, you're not necessarily opposing UNHCR. You're not presenting yourself as an enemy.
In fact, you're helping.
Absolutely.
In the protection, which is the mandate of the UNHCR, you are actually informing them and helping to bring that authentic information forward.
You see, what is happening, Victor, is that a lot of institutions, a lot of organizations have, you know, intervened in this issue in a hushed manner.
Yeah.
They come quietly and talk to UNHCR, and by the time they leave, I think they have the feeling that if we talk about this, now we are attacking UNHCR.
Yes, I have had organizations coming on board, and 2 weeks later, they speak to the UNHCR, and I have wondered why there has been that turnaround. This explains it.
It does. You see, the way UNHCR has been ambiguous, has been vague, you know, in describing what is happening in Kakuma, creating the situation, you know, seem like you have a rebellion, you have a group that is fighting them. That is the picture that most people go away with. Let me take the opportunity, because this is a huge platform. Let me take this opportunity. We are not fighting UNHCR.
Yes,
to
please.
talk about the failings, the shortcomings, the challenges of refugees is not an attack on UNHCR.
Yeah.
To mention that refugees who have been attacked are still in the area where they have been attacked is not an attack on UNHCR. It is simply giving information about the situation that is in the ground. If you are a human rights defender, if you are an LGBTQ activist, and you think condemning the horrible, dehumanizing attacks on LGBTQ refugees in Kakuma constitutes an attack on UNHCR, I have my doubts about your calling. There is a clear distinction between evil and good. These attacks are downright evil. They, as the director of international protection, Mr. Volker Turk, put it, are not permissible. I would think that as a human rights defender, this should be your position. It has nothing to do with whether UNHCR has acted or not. The very acts of violence, the acts that are being perpetrated by homophobes is enough for you to speak out. before we even begin to look at the role of UNHCR. So it's not just the UNHCR that has not given a clear message.
Yeah, you're
We
right.
have not seen this from the human rights defenders, the human rights organizations.
You can say that again.
For example, Amnesty International, we have not seen this. Kenyan Human Rights Organization, we have not seen this.
There are a lot of international organizations that are aware of what is happening. And today, they will not speak about it.
Because they think they're attacking UNHCR. So now tell me.
They have been misinformed.
Absolutely.
How do people get out of that misinformation, Gilbert?
I need them to answer this question. If you're a human rights organization, if you're a human rights defender, activist, surely can you not tell the difference between an attacker on LGBTQI persons and UNHCR? That you confuse the two. Please do answer that question for me. Can you not see the difference? If you think condemning them is attacking UNHCR, then might be you're not seeing the difference. But the day you see the difference between these evil, horrible, orchestrated attacks and an institution that is standing for protection, then you will have the guts and your hearts will be in the right place to condemn this. There's a huge difference.
That's very
and
powerful.
If UNHCR takes offense that you have condemned these attacks, then let them take the offense.
That's very powerful.
Let them take offense. You will hold your heads high, knowing that you did the right thing by protecting the powerless.
Gilbert. Wow.
Yes, please.
That was very powerful. I know that I could have actually asked you to end at that because it was so powerful, but I'll just give you another second for your last word. If you have any call to the UNHCR, any word to any other entity, any word to the refugees themselves, you could use this opportunity to reach out to the different entities that you'd like to reach out to.
I want this to go out to fellow LGBTQ refugees. I know as we fled persecution from wherever we came from, we had dreams, we had expectations, and we believed that we were going to find a community where we could flourish, live, love, and be who we are. That dream, please don't let it die. Hold on to that dream. The circumstances, the horrible situations that we go through, whether you're a mother of children subjected to trauma, whether you're a lesbian that has been raped several times, whether you've been attacked and injured, this also will end. I strongly believe that we will go through this. We just need to cherish those dreams and use them to hang on, to cling on to life. Before you think of committing suicide, hang on to dear life. Before you think of ending your own life, those dreams can still be a reality. As long as we still have a voice, even these powerful, dark powers that distort whatever we say, that make it seem like it is our fault to be attacked, that want us to believe that we deserve the horrible things that we're going through, We will overcome all this. We will survive. We just need to hang on. If you are a human rights defender, you can help these dreams keep alive. If you're a human rights activist, you can keep these dreams burning by condemning evil for what it is, by drawing a line between right and wrong. Victor, thank you so much for hosting me on your show, not as a spokesperson for Block 13, but as a human rights defender and an activist.
Thank you so much, Gilbert. I would really love to thank you for standing up amidst all the challenges from all sides. I know that you are a defender who has faced a lot of intimidation and threats for what you stand for. And I commend you for the good job that you're doing. We just keep praying to the universe that you keep alive and safely get out together with all the other refugees out of danger. I thank you so much for what you have selflessly given.
Thank you so much.
Adios. Thank you so much. Viewers out there, thank you so much for keeping with us. That was a very wonderful conversation with Gilbert Kagarura, a human rights defender at in Kakuma camp, but also has another hat of spokesperson at Block 13, has done a great job bringing out all these issues of LGBTQ suffering in Kakuma camp. I thank you for sticking with us. I remind you that on Sunday, we have another episode of Lest We Forget. And also this week, until 2 weeks from now, we will be focusing on transgender issues as we are participating in the Trans Awareness Month. And you all know that November 20th is Tudor Transgender Day of Remembrance, when we remember all those folks that have fallen as a result of transphobia because of their gender identity and or expression. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Victor Mukasa Show. Adios.